Hey, when are you gonna apologize for stealing that handbag? You're always cooped up in your room, talking about remote work this and that. It's suffocating living with you. I want you out. Thieves like you should just move out already. You're right, Mom. It must be unsettling to have a thief in the house every day. My mother-in-law had previously hidden her own misplaced handbag in my room, framing me for theft. Of course, I didn't steal anything. It was probably Nancy's doing, since she's always hanging around the house. I'm fed up dealing with these in-laws. With that in mind, I started planning something with Frank. And now, when my mother-in-law told me to move out, I smoothly replied, "Sure. I've already taken care of the moving arrangements. I'm packing up my stuff now." What? Ignoring the surprised looks on my mother-in-law and Nancy's faces, I hurriedly left the house. The next day, my phone was blowing up with calls from my mother-in-law. I'm Linda, a 35-year-old office worker, married for 2 years now. I was taught not to waste money since I was a child, and I've stuck to that. Even as an adult, that hasn't changed. Since my single days, saving money's been my hobby, and I've always enjoyed pinching pennies and squirreling away cash. When I was still in college, my mom passed away. After that, I lived alone in our family home while working part-time jobs. After graduating, I got interested in making money through blogging while working at a company, and I've been at it steadily for about 10 years now. Then I married Frank, who is 2 years older than me, and for the past 2 years, we've been living with my mother-in-law. My father-in-law passed away a few years before we got hitched. But my mother-in-law, who's just turned 70, is still full of beans. Truth is, we had our reasons for moving in with her. Even before tying the knot, we had this dream of both working and building our own house. Once we achieve that, we plan on moving out. Basically, we're living with her to keep our living expenses down, and she's cool with that. If anything, she seems to prefer living with Nancy, Frank's sister. Nancy, 33, got married 7 years ago and lives nearby. She's got a 6-year-old son, Kevin, who goes to kindergarten. She often drops by our place on her way back from picking him up, and she and her mom chat for hours. Well, I'm usually at work then, so it doesn't bother me much. I get that Nancy wants to visit her folks' place whenever she feels like it. So I've been putting up with my mother-in-law and Nancy without any complaints. At first, when Kevin started kindergarten, Nancy would only stay for 2 to 3 hours. But now, almost 2 years later, she's practically here from morning till night. That would have been fine, but lately, she's even been coming over on weekends and staying all day. I wonder if her husband doesn't say anything about her spending so much time at her parents' place. Curious, I casually asked Nancy. "Nancy, it's great that you've been coming over so often to keep your mom company, but is your husband okay with it?" I tried to show my appreciation for her keeping my mother-in-law company while I'm away at work all day. I thought I was being considerate, but Nancy gave me a suspicious look. Maybe she didn't want me asking about her home life. Ignoring my attempt at being thoughtful, she shot back sarcastically. "What's that supposed to mean? Are you saying I shouldn't be here?" "Look, I'm just being considerate because there are no kids in this house, and I thought she might be lonely. So I'm doing a favor by bringing her grandchildren around." "That's right, Linda. If you two had given me at least one grandchild, Nancy wouldn't have to be so thoughtful. Don't ask such nasty questions." Even my mother-in-law chimed in with a snide remark, as if backing Nancy up. She never said anything like that when Nancy wasn't around. I guess mothers get bolder when their daughters are around. There's no point in arguing when it's 2 against 1. Frank's always working late, and I've got no one on my side. All I could do was keep quiet and put up with it. Well, Frank's working hard with all that overtime for our goals, so I can't complain. But still, I've been so focused on saving money that I never really thought about having children. But I'm 35 now, and I'm starting to think it might be nice to have one. If we both keep working full-time, we might not have the chance to have kids. So I decided to talk to Frank about it. "Hey, we've been working hard to build our house, but I really want a child now. I'm thinking of quitting my job to focus on trying for a baby. Frank listened to me seriously. Yeah, you're right. We're not getting any younger. If we're gonna have a child, it's gotta be now. All right, I'll make sure to bring home the bacon, so you focus on trying for a baby, Linda. Thanks. I'll do my best to get pregnant soon. But I'm gonna keep up with my blog work from home, okay? I've been keeping up with my blog even after getting married, squeezing it in between work and housework. If I keep that up, I won't have to worry about putting all the financial burden on Frank even if I quit my job to focus on having a baby. So I started spending my days cleaning and doing laundry in the morning, then working on my blog during the day. But a while after I quit my job, Frank came home one day looking all serious. Welcome home. What's wrong? You don't look so hot. I'm sorry, Linda. I've been assigned to work overseas for a year starting next month. I asked the company for a raise, but they told me to transfer to an overseas branch instead. I couldn't hide my surprise at this sudden news. What? Then I'll go with you. I quit my job to try for a baby, after all. But Frank quietly shook his head. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go alone. I heard it's not an easy place for families to live, and I don't want to put you through that. I'll definitely be back in a year, so can you wait for me here? Frank looked dead serious. So, not wanting to trouble him any further, I decided to stay at his parents' house. All right. I know you'll be in a tough spot in a new environment, so don't push yourself too hard, okay? Thanks. And Linda, if anything happens with Mom or Nancy, let me know right away. Don't try to handle it all by yourself. Seems like Frank knew. He knew that his mom and Nancy were being mean to me. Still, I was determined to get along with his family until he came back. But the very next day, my mother-in-law and Nancy started yelling at me as soon as they saw my face. Linda! What's the big idea, not going with Frank on his overseas assignment? That's right. You quit your job, so there's no reason for you to stay here, is there? This isn't even your house, we're just letting you stay here. You've got no right to be here when my brother's gone. My mother-in-law was one thing, but Nancy, who's married and living elsewhere, was acting like this was her house. She probably thinks she can hang around here even more freely if I'm gone. As if she's not here enough already. I thought I shouldn't just take it lying down, so I spoke up clearly. This is what Frank and I decided together. It's not just my decision. So I'm gonna take care of things here until Frank comes back. I thought they'd snap back right away, but surprisingly, they just left the room without saying anything. But when I looked at their faces closely, I could have sworn I saw a nasty little smirk. I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine, wondering if they were plotting something. After Frank left for his assignment, my bad feeling turned out to be right on the money. The harassment from my mother-in-law and Nancy got even worse. My mother-in-law's been spreading rumors around the neighborhood that I didn't go with Frank because it's not a temporary assignment, but a separation. And Nancy's been going around crying crocodile tears, telling folks that she can't live with her parents because I'm hogging the place. Because of that, the neighbors have started giving me the stink eye. What on earth did I ever do to those two? The harassment is so bad that I can't even tell Frank about it. If I did, it'd just make him worry more. For now, I'm just gonna focus on my work from home. At least that'll take my mind off things a bit. But lately, even when I'm just sitting at my computer in my room, my mother-in-law's been calling me out a lot. Are you wasting time on that weird side hustle again? Aren't you supposed to be taking care of the house while Frank's away? If so, you better do more housework. Huh? I just finished the laundry and cleaning earlier. I was shocked by my mother-in-law's harsh words. She used to only act tough when Nancy was around, but lately she's been bossing me around even when it's just the two of us. Laundry and cleaning ain't all there is to housework, you know. You're not working at a company anymore, so you're a full-time housewife now. That means you gotta do everything around the house. She's probably taking advantage of Frank not being here to be extra tough on me. Still, I gritted my teeth and endured it, determined not to lose. I guess she didn't like my attitude. Recently, when Nancy comes over, I can hear them whispering together. They might be planning something no good. But I kept on enduring it. However, one night, something unbelievable happened. Nancy was over again with Kevin, staying late as usual. Suddenly, even though it was the middle of the night, things got noisy in the living room. It seemed like my mother-in-law and Nancy started searching for something in a panic. "It's gone. It's gone," they shouted, so I went to check what was going on. "What's the matter?" I asked from the living room doorway. My mother-in-law and Nancy glared at me. "What's the matter?" "My precious handbag is missing. The expensive designer one Nancy bought me from abroad last year." "Huh? I don't know anything about it, but I'll help you look." I was in the middle of my work from home, but with all this noise, I couldn't concentrate anyway. Plus, Kevin was still awake, sitting quietly in the corner of the room. I figured I'd help look so we could get him to bed soon. But then Nancy started saying nasty things. "Oh, don't act so innocent. You're the one who hid it, aren't you? You're just pretending to help look because you'd be in trouble if we found out." "What? No way!" Nancy was trying to pin this on me. What made her say such a thing? "I didn't hide anything. Don't say weird stuff without any proof." "Oh really? Don't you have a motive? Getting back at us for treating you badly. And we've looked everywhere in the house but can't find it. It's just weird, no matter how you look at it." My mother-in-law was completely suspicious of me too. Then Nancy started looking around the room. "Come to think of it, Mom, the only place we haven't looked is Linda's room, right? I'm gonna go check." "What?" Nancy barged into my room. I didn't have anything to hide, but still, it was too much even if we're family. In less than 10 seconds, Nancy came out of the room holding the handbag. "Mom, I found it. It was in the closet. See, Linda was hiding it after all." I thought this was ridiculous and looked at my mother-in-law, saying, "That's not true. I didn't hide anything." "Don't try to weasel out of this. I knew it, you act all innocent, but you're really something else." My mother-in-law sneered at me. Could this be an act to discredit me? This harassment has gone too far, I can't take it anymore. Nancy, coming out of my room, said, "Linda, you quit your job because you wanted to have a baby, but then Frank went overseas, and now you're just doing this measly work-from-home gig, right? You must have been hard up for cash and planning to sell this bag." I stood my ground against her nasty words and replied, "I absolutely did not do this. If you want to suspect me, go right ahead." Leaving it at that, I went straight back to my room. I paused my work and started planning something. I was gonna wait until Frank came back to think things through, but I can't leave the situation as it is. A year passed. Since then, their harassment continued, but I mostly stayed in my room, focusing on my work from home. The plan I had in mind was progressing smoothly. One day, my mother-in-law, who seemed to be at her wits' end living with me, finally said, "Hey, when are you gonna apologize for stealing that handbag? You're always cooped up in your room, talking about remote work this and that. It's suffocating living with you. I want you out. Thieves like you should just move out already." "You're right, Mom. It must be unsettling to have a thief in the house every day." Nancy, who was hanging around our house as usual, chimed in with her snide remarks. But I'm not scared of anything they say anymore. So I smoothly replied to both of them, "Sure thing. I've already taken care of the moving arrangements. I'm packing up my stuff now." "What?" My unexpected response left my mother-in-law and Nancy wide-eyed. Actually, the plan was about buying a custom-built house. I found out it takes about a year to complete. During that time, I'd been secretly making arrangements with Frank without telling my mother-in-law or Nancy. And today, our new house is finished. Frank will be back from his overseas assignment soon, so I've already completed the moving procedures ahead of time. My mother-in-law and Nancy, not knowing this, were surprised at first but then suddenly started laughing. You're just talking big again. Where do you think you're gonna move to? You don't even have a family home to go back to. Well, I'll let you know once I've settled in after the move. So, please take care of the payments from now on. What payments are you talking about? My mother-in-law asked, but I pretended not to hear and quickly left the house. The next day, while I was checking the delivered packages at our new house, my phone suddenly rang. I couldn't answer right away because I was dealing with the movers, but the calls kept coming. I had a pretty good idea who it was, but I checked the call log anyway. Sure enough, it was my mother-in-law. I decided to answer, worried about what she might say if I kept ignoring her. As soon as I picked up, she started yelling like she was on fire. Hey, you've been paying our utility bills with the money Frank's been sending, right? Why am I getting unpaid bills? And it's $1,000 for electricity, gas, and water combined. Yes, I've been paying them until now, but we stopped the automatic payments for your utilities because we've moved out. So from now on, please pay them yourself. But $1,000? Isn't that way too high? Well, it can't be helped. My mother-in-law and Nancy keep the TV on late into the night, blast the AC, and chat away. They often leave the water running too, so the water bill alone comes to about $400 every 2 months. While I was paying, I had chosen a package deal for electricity and gas with internet that was cheaper, but I canceled all that 2 months ago. But the bills that arrived weren't just for utilities. Ever since I started living with my in-laws, my mother-in-law and Nancy had joined an expensive gym. They even made me come along to sign up and set up the membership fees to be taken out of my bank account. But I'd already closed that account, so now they got bills for last month's fees and this month's annual fee too. With the utilities and gym memberships for both of us, it's gonna be about $6,000. There's no way I can pay that. Linda, you gotta ask Frank to pay for it. Come to think of it, moving in with the in-laws to save on rent might have been a miscalculation. I'd been paying for their hobbies thinking it was a nice gesture for my mother-in-law agreeing to let us live there. Now I'm regretting not just getting our own place from the start. But I wasn't gonna let her walk all over me anymore, so I firmly replied. No. I told you before that from now on, you need to pay for your own utilities and hobbies yourself. What? Is that any way for my son's wife to act? Oh, I get it. You don't have money because you gotta pay rent now, right? Well, that makes sense. You quit your job and now you're just earning pocket change at home. My mother-in-law, who'd been begging for money just a minute ago, suddenly started looking down on me when I refused. But no matter what she said, I stayed cool as a cucumber and answered. No, we bought the house and paid for it in full. So we're not having any money troubles right now. That shut her up real quick. I thought I heard a faint "you're kidding," but I figured the conversation was over and hung up. Then, a while later, somehow my mother-in-law and Nancy found out where we lived and showed up at our new place. Finally found you. We've been looking for you, Linda. You're living in quite a big house, aren't you? My mother-in-law looked surprised as she scanned the whole house from the front door. How did you find out where we live? Turns out she even hired a private eye to track me down. Why'd she go that far when she's broke? When I asked, Nancy gave me an unexpected answer. Linda, you're that famous blogger, aren't you? I stumbled across it online. You're popular for introducing money-saving gadgets, and word is you're making quite a bit. So that's how you could build such a big house without even taking out a loan? By the way, how much exactly do you make a year? It's true that I've been earning money from the blog I've been running for years. It varies month to month, but for the past few years, I've been making about $200,000 a year on average. And with Frank working hard with overtime and overseas assignments, we've managed to save up enough to build a custom home. But I wasn't about to tell my money-grubbing mother-in-law that. When I didn't answer, they pressed even harder. Anyway, it's clear you're making a ton. You could just up and build a house like this, right, Mom? We're gonna live here together from now on, aren't we? Of course. It's my son's house after all. It'd be a waste for just the two of you to live in such a big place. Right, Linda? I was at a loss for words, overwhelmed by their pushiness. As I stood there, pale-faced, suddenly. Mom, that's not happening. Frank! Frank, who'd already finished his overseas assignment and returned home, came out from inside the house. He glared at his mother with sharp eyes and said in a shouting voice, Mom, I've known all along. I knew you and Nancy were being mean to Linda. There's no way we're living together again after that. We weren't being mean at all. Where's your proof of that? My mother-in-law tried to play innocent. Proof? I've called someone who can testify. They should be here any minute. My mother-in-law and Nancy looked flustered, their faces saying, Who did you call? Just then, a car pulled up in front of the house. Out came Kevin and his father. Nancy's husband, Eric. Eric? Why are you here? Frank and Eric have been friends since college. Frank had called Eric here after hearing Nancy yelling insults at me from inside the house. Eric turned to Nancy with a stern look and demanded, Nancy, have you signed those divorce papers I gave you yet? Nancy was speechless, just staring at the ground. Seeing her daughter like that, my mother-in-law asked Eric worriedly, Why divorce? Did Nancy do something wrong? You know very well what she did, don't you? Ever since Kevin was born, she's been hanging around her parents' house all the time, hardly ever coming home. The only thing she does is drop Kevin off and pick him up from kindergarten. I can't stay married to a wife who barely does any housework. My mother-in-law's face turned bright red as Eric laid it all out. No wonder. She'd been the one keeping Nancy at home all the time. She must have finally felt ashamed as a parent. Plus, Kevin's been telling me. He says his mom and grandma have been being mean to Linda. I can't just sit by while she not only neglects our home but also treats my brother's wife so badly. As if something clicked for him after hearing Eric's words, Kevin spoke up. That's right. The worst time was when Aunt Linda was cooking in the kitchen, and Mom hid Grandma's bag in Aunt Linda's room. Then Mom lied and yelled at Aunt Linda, saying she stole it. So that's what happened back then. It really was a prank those two set up. My mother-in-law and Nancy treated me like a criminal, saying I stole it. Just thinking about it now makes my blood boil. Looks like the person Frank said would testify was Kevin. Now in elementary school, Kevin's grown into a proper young man. He can now speak up about things he couldn't say back then. But Nancy, of all things, smacked Kevin hard on the head and whispered in his ear. Hey! I told you not to tell anyone about that, didn't I? She tried to cover it up, but it was too late. Eric's sharp gaze pierced through Nancy. Nancy! How dare you say that to our son? No, it's not just that. I can't believe you did such a terrible thing to Linda. This isn't gonna end with just a divorce. Damn straight. Nancy couldn't say a word back and just shrank away, her face twisted. My mother-in-law, seeming to pity her, slowly embraced her and stroked her head. Seeing this, Frank spoke up in a strong tone. This is why Nancy's become such a spoiled brat, because you baby her so much, Mom. You two ganged up on Linda, gave her a hard time, and now you want to move in with us for money? I'm cutting ties with you. Get out of here now. Scared by Frank's yelling, my mother-in-law turned pale and started sweating. But then Nancy threw her a lifeline. Mom, don't worry about what Frank's saying. Really? Well, that's a relief. I almost fell for Frank's empty threats. I'd bet it was Linda who put him up to it, but it looks like it was a pretty dumb move. The two of them looked at me and smirked as they said this. It's clear they're gonna keep showing up demanding we take care of them no matter how many times we turn them away. And if Nancy gets divorced, there's no doubt they'll both come barging in. I looked at Frank, wondering what to do. Frank gave me a look that said don't worry and turned back to his mother with a sly grin. Who's the dumb one here? Mom, you're still healthy, so there's no need for me to take care of you. But if you're gonna ignore our wishes and insist on living with us for support, we've got our own ideas. Ideas? What are you talking about? Frank's idea was that if they kept insisting on living with us even after we refused, we'd file for a restraining order with the family court. If his mom violated it, she'd have to pay us a fine. That smart Frank knows all sorts of things. Hearing that, his mom had no choice but to back down. Nancy seemed to be getting real antsy, like she'd been planning to rely on her mom and live with us even if she got divorced and kicked out. No way! I came along because I thought Mom was gonna live with Frank and his wife in this big house. If we can't live together, what am I supposed to do? Whining like that, she suddenly changed her tune and turned to Eric. Hey, honey. I'm sorry for what I did to Linda. I'll do the housework properly from now on, so can't you forgive me for everything? Nancy's sudden sickly sweet voice made me wanna gag. It's too late for apologies now, I ain't gonna forgive her. Eric made a disgusted face and shot back. It's too late for that. Just sign the divorce papers already. I don't even want to look at your face anymore. Yeah. Mom, you're being gross. I don't want this either. Kevin, not you too. Even her son Kevin said that, and Nancy seemed completely deflated. Fine. I'll go home and write up the divorce papers. Happy now? Nancy said tearfully, finally giving up. Somehow, we managed to resolve things. Frank's mom went home, and Nancy went back with Eric for now to submit the divorce papers before moving back to her parents. I was finally alone with Frank in our new home, feeling relieved. Linda, I'm sorry for all the trouble you've been through. It's okay. Let's just focus on living happily from now on. We smiled at each other as we said this. After that, Nancy submitted the divorce papers right away and moved back to her parents. Later, Eric came to visit us to apologize for all the trouble. I'm truly sorry for all the inconvenience we've caused you over the years, Linda. I felt embarrassed seeing Eric politely apologized. You've been dealing with the inconvenience of your wife being away from home all this time. No, Nancy never did any housework to begin with, so it wasn't really inconvenient. By the way, have you heard about Nancy recently? Eric was grinning for some reason. Curious about what happened, I asked. What's going on? You've got this smirk on your face. Did something happen with Nancy? I couldn't help but laugh out loud at what Eric told me. Turns out, Frank's mom and Nancy, who are living together now, are both unemployed and behind on their utility bills and other payments. Desperate, Frank's mom asked Nancy to do something crazy. She told her to make money blogging like me. Nancy thought it'd be easy since I could do it. But earning good money from a blog ain't that simple. I've been working at it for 12 years, since I was single, learning from my mistakes and putting in consistent effort. Someone starting from scratch with no knowledge ain't gonna make money overnight. Sure enough, trying to make money in a hurry backfired, and Nancy's blog got a ton of hate comments and blew up in her face. Apparently, she was posting a lot of unfounded personal opinions and exaggerated claims about products. It'd be one thing if she could take the criticism gracefully and apologize, but Nancy's got too much pride for that. She deleted the blog right away and hasn't done anything since. Eric says Nancy took the criticism so hard she got sick and became a shut-in. So now Frank's mom has to support her unemployed daughter. You'd think she'd just abandon her, but I guess she feels responsible for spoiling Nancy and raising her to be so selfish. Still, Frank's mom has never worked before, so she doesn't know what to do. She started doing day labor jobs for now. These days, Frank's mom and Nancy are yelling at each other a lot, sometimes all night long, causing trouble for the neighbors. The neighbors were already giving them the cold shoulder after realizing they'd been spreading lies about me. Now, nobody wants anything to do with them. Those two are struggling to get by with no one to help them. Well, I guess they brought it on themselves. We might have to take care of Frank's mom when she gets older and needs nursing care, but she's still healthy as a horse. So we probably won't have to worry about that while she's alive. Meanwhile, Frank and I are living happily in our new home. We cut ties with Nancy, but Kevin is still Frank's nephew, and Eric is a good friend. So Eric and Kevin come over to play often, and we all enjoy having meals together. We've got one more thing to look forward to now. I'm pregnant with our first child. It's exciting to think about our family growing. Kevin's all fired up, saying I'm gonna be a big brother like he's getting a little brother or sister himself. Since Eric says he's done with marriage, Kevin and our kid might end up being like real siblings. We've been through some tough times, but we've built our dream custom home, and now we're gonna build a happy family. I'm determined to live a fun life with Frank, our baby, and Eric and Kevin, making up for all the hardships we've been through.